Okay.
All right, so we are live. All right. Shalom, family. What's going on? We finally made it. I'll explain here in a minute what kind of went down and what happened, but definitely glad to have my brother in the building. And so we're going to get into it here in just a few minutes. We're going to talk to him about his trip to Vegas. We're going to talk to him about just who is Zion Lexx. When I first met him, I met him as a couple of years back as Zion the Lion Lexx. So from that point on, he's kind of transitioned and kind of watched him from afar. I did get a chance to meet him personally, which was definitely truly a blessing to meet him. And those of y'all in the community know he's definitely a brother who's humble. Not only that, but he kind of has a trait of, I would say, just meeting him, he probably would agree that he does have a trait of introvertness about him. but you know, that's a good thing to be able to have that trait and whatnot. But also at the same time, very observant. But I guess that with that trait, it also brings him to a place of being, as his famous word is, meticulous in his approach to things. So we definitely gonna get into it. I know brothers and sisters are jumping in and tuning in, so I'm gonna wait till everybody kind of build up. Everybody was hitting me up, asking me what happened to the live and all that good stuff. So we sitting here, giving a few minutes. I'm gonna get everybody a few minutes to jump in. I'm not going to play any music or anything like that because I don't want to get kicked out again. So at first I was like, man, I'm leaving Zoom and going to StreamYard. But I figured it was YouTube. And so that's the case. So we're gonna just build from here. But wait till everybody get in here. They'll be coming in here. I see a couple people coming in. So I want to just make sure that everybody who did hit me up get it. So let me go and reshare this link again. And I hope everybody's doing a wonderful job. But thanks again, brother, for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And man, you know, my thing is, man, you know, we family. So just, you know, hey, however which way you want to go, you know, I have certain questions that I want to ask, but I don't want to limit it and make it as robotic. I like it to kind of be organic and fun and just kind of just talk about a few things and whatnot. So some certain people may not be mentioned, some of your competitors, shall I say, and whatnot. I don't think that they deserve the conversation, but at the same time, I do have a couple of clips that I want you to check out from you and for you to kind of elaborate on. I know you have been one who has been on Sinetta several times, whatnot, and so you cause a problem that you've gone from Zion the Lion Lexx to Mr. Controversial. That's my thing for you. You know, Mr. Controversial. You've been causing some problems, man. You've been causing some problems, not only outside but also inside your own community. You've been causing some problems with certain things. So we're going to talk about that too, but we definitely want to talk about who Zion Lexx is. I don't think a lot of people know, and there was some things that I learned about you when we were in New York. You just kind of gave the kind of rundown of who you are as far as your upbringing and things like that. And I think that's something that people that should be taken in consideration, that people I don't think a lot of people know that about, your transition and how you came into Torah and things like that. And I think that's something that people would know that. I think that they would kind of have a better understanding of your journey and things like that. So I guess we're kind of in it right now. And we'll just go from there. So the first question I want to ask is, who is Zion Lexx, man? Tell us about who is Zion Lexx.
Well, Zion Lexx is a name created out of my birth name. My mama and my dad in particular, they named me after Alex Haley, who's the author of Roots. And he's also the writer responsible for the autobiography of Malcolm X. His name is Alex Haley. So my dad is a huge fan of his. So he said, we're going to call this boy Alex. Even though my older brother, his name is Jamar. So he has more of what we would kind of consider a black name. But they're going to call me Alex. But it's who they're, naming me after that was powerful. Alex Haley, the author of Roots. So the Lexx of Zion Lexx is a name I grew up with, from early childhood. I didn't like the name Alex, never did, still don't. So all my friends would call me Lexx, and Zion is just my middle name. So when I came into the community, Brother Sarnetta said, what should I call you? The very first interview I did with Sarnetta is at the Magic Johnson Theater in Harlem. The Magic Johnson Theater in Harlem. And at the very first interview, just before he hit roll on the camera, he said, oh, damn, I don't know your name. You was referred to me by Brother Nasi Yashuvel, and he didn't tell me your name. What should I call you? And at that point, I was a little nervous because I didn't know what his channel does. So I didn't want to give him the name that I'm known for in my community, which is my Hebrew name, my author name, Avdiel Ben Levi. If anyone ever bought any books of mine, you know that my author name is the Hebrew name that I have, which is Avdiel Ben Levi. So I said, you know what? I'm not sure how this interview gonna go. Because I'm the kind of person, what you give me is what you gonna get.
Right.
So if this man make me come out of character, I don't want my community to find the video. So guess what we gonna do? We gonna use my middle name and we gonna use my street name, Zion Lexx. And right there was the birth of the name, Zion Lexx. And this is the first time I'm ever telling that story, by the way. So you're getting kind of an exclusive.
Absolutely. So, and speaking of Nasi, just kind of a little bit, I don't want to go into it, but he was the first person that I saw that came into the conscious community as pretty much an Israelite, a Torah observant Israelite, and challenged and gave, in my opinion, Sarah Seti the business.
Oh, of course.
And so that was the first time that kind of like, I think that kind of woke everybody up in the entire conscious community, whether they be Israelite, whether they be Kemet or Muslim. I think that was kind of the wake up, like, wow, man, Israel, I don't think I won't say they didn't take us serious, but I think that at some point that did. And I think that kind of catapulted a conversation and more of a build between those who were non-Messianic and those who were Messianic, because what happens is, I think from that point on, it became an attack on anybody that was Israel. It didn't really matter if it was Messianic or non-Messianic. And you're familiar with you were there personally dealing with the Kemet on trial stuff and things like that. So, but yeah, so transition from that. So let's talk about like your introduction to the Bible, to Torah. Like, what age, how did you get introduced to it, and whatnot? And so I think the audience needs to hear that, that transition and how you was introduced.
Okay, that's an excellent question. I had some friends, and still do consider them friends, in Brooklyn, New York, where I was born and raised. Kemuel Ben Yehuda, Benahu Ben Yehuda, Akiva Ben Yehuda, all sons of a man who is very, very well known in New York City and Chicago, an Israelite who's been around since the early 60s, His name is Crown Prince Zerishadai Katan Ben Yehuda. He actually trained Joel Judah, who's the father of Zab Judah. So, you know, coming up, I would see Zab all the time. Zab Judah was a familiar face because his father attended the same school as all my teachers, and his father was a student to my teachers. So Zab Judah, the boxer, would have never became an actual boxer if his father, Joel Judah, didn't learn the martial arts from Crown Prince Zerishadai. So shout out to them. We're hanging out in school. I'm about, I want to say, 8 years old, and we build a bond, we build a friendship. By the time I hit about 11, 12 years old, we moved to a part of New York known as Staten Island, which is Wu-Tang land, you know, Shaolin. So when we move out there, these same brothers that I was friends with, these Israelite brothers, they move to Staten Island as well. In fact, they move about 5 minutes away. I could walk and be there in 10 minutes. 5 minutes away, driving, 10 minutes walking. So I go to their house as we're reconnecting. The thing we have in common is that we're all from Brooklyn. And they're like, yo, it's Friday night. You got to go. I was like, why? Thursday, you know, yesterday I was able to stay here long. Why I got to go? And they was like, it's the Shabbat. And I was like, the who? They was like, it's the Shabbat. And I was like, oh, what, y'all African? I didn't know what the hell they was. I know what Shabbat was. Then I looked on the wall, which had Hebrew writing, and I was like, oh, y'all is African. Oh, okay. And they was like, well, that's biblical Hebrew. And I was like, wait, y'all African Hebrews? And they say, yeah, you could say that. And I said, wow, this is interesting. I've always been a very curious personality because from a young age, my father had me reading, you know, major works. I was reading from Babylon to Timbuktu long before I met these guys. But to be honest with you, like children gonna be children, man, I ain't want to read that damn book. So my father comes and gives me this book right here. My father comes and give me this book. I'm probably about 9 years old. But you see, the cover that we all have is yellow. Rudolph R. Windsor could tell you himself, the original cover of this book is green and it was a little thicker. And that's the one that my dad had. That's the one that's been circulating since the 80s. So I actually had this book, but in green in the 80s. But I'll tell you the truth, brother. When my dad asked me to read it, I said, yep, I read it and I'm done. So the creator was trying to show me from early who I was.
Right.
And me being the knucklehead that I am, you know, I was resistant. So I lost the blessing initially. The creator gave me another opportunity through these three young men. I stayed at their house that evening. We began to keep Sabbath. They opened the Torah. Their mother read from the Torah in Hebrew. Very, very impressive. Very, very impressive. You know, in fact, the particular edition of the Tanakh that I swear by, the one I put a lot of respect on, is the Stone Edition Tanakh. And their mom also put me on to put me onto that as well. And just so we're clear, people know me as a Hebrew teacher now, but the first person I ever learned Hebrew from was a woman, their mom. She was the first person I ever saw speak Hebrew fluently and would always tell me, when you come in this house, you're going to speak Hebrew.
Wow.
And would always drop, you know, little things on me from, you know, here and there. So at this time, I'm 14 years old. I'm 14 years old. In fact, I believe I literally just turned 14 to be very, very accurate, because this was around the time of my birthday when I had just turned 14. Fast forward, I'm now 41 years old and I'll be 42 in a couple of months. So it's been a 27-year journey in the Hebrew Israelite community, knowing myself as an Israelite. I began at a school congregation in Brooklyn known as Beth-Ab Shalom. Beth-Ab Shalom, which stands for the House of the Father's Peace. The House of the Father's Peace, Beth-Ab Shalom. And from there, I stayed there maybe about a good year. The year is 1994. I transitioned in 1995 I want to say accidentally, they say to me, you've been going to our mother's temple, and I know you enjoying yourself, but I think you're really going to like the temple that my father teaches at. I said, what school is that? They said, we're going to take you. It's a place called Shema Israel. When I go there, that's where I meet Nasi Yashuvel. Because Nasi Yashuvel, his father, that's his father's congregation, Shema Israel, still is to this day, 297 Saratoga Avenue in the heart of Brownsville / East New York, Brooklyn, which is hood, by the way. Like, we keep in Shabbat, and I know I ain't supposed to say this, but y'all want some exclusives, right? We keep in Shabbat, and a lot of people among us got that thing nearby because we in the heart of Brownsville. We in the heart of Brownsville.
Absolutely.
I'm just keeping it real with you.
Absolutely.
And
you got to.
There's a lot of the members there that are probably watching, like, yo, he gonna just say that? He just gonna let it be known what we was. But you know, this is the times that we lived in. There was an era among our people in the Maccabean period where Judah Maccabee and his brothers said, we will not be attacked, not even on our sacred days. And there were times that the book records, the Apocrypha records, that they even had to defend themselves on the Shabbat. And I could tell you, you want to get an exclusive? I could tell you, we had to literally let them things ring off in Brooklyn, New York on the Shabbat. Real talk. Real talk. I'm being honest with you.
Right. Absolutely.
This is Brooklyn, New York in the 90s. We talking Smith and Wesson era, boot camp clique. All right, we talking Wu-Tang. You know the vibes. You know how tough it was. We're around the same age. So you got to imagine all these young men standing in front of this place wearing Star of David. Where do you think I get all this jewelry from? Part of the jewelry that I wear is definitely from my Caribbean upbringing. Like, my grandfather had rings on damn near every finger, like a gold chain. You know, Caribbean culture is big on gold. African culture is big on gold. But,
right.
But I never really saw that in church. But when I went around Israelites, all the Israelite brothers would have like either a big Star of David or a chain that says Kai, the Hebrew word for life. So imagine all these young guys, all these young men in Brownsville, Brooklyn. Everybody damn near got jewelry on. Brother, somebody gonna test you. and we got tested. We got tested. And thank God, through his grace and his mercy, we passed every test. So coming into the conscious community and having to deal with people like Seti, and I might be going forward, you might want to, I'm sure you're probably going to ask me about that at some point, but I just want to say now in brief, when people say to me, you're brave, or, you know, you got a lot of courage, or you're tough, I tell them, it's just my environment and our upbringing. Remember, a lot of us are a reflection of the environment which births us. Then the rest is our personality. So who we become in the world is first a reflection of your environment, how you were raised and who you were surrounded by, and the rest is your own personality. So when you add my environment and my niggardly personality, it could be interesting with me.
Hold on. I'm trying to hold on, Moreh. I don't know if it's it seemed like the feed was kind of freezing, or the internet or something like that was unstable. I don't know if it was on my end or your end, but it just seemed that way. But go ahead. It's kind of clear now. I don't know if it's because sometimes you could be moving too fast or something, and it's trying to keep up with you, or something like that. But go ahead. You good.
Okay, so in a nutshell, what I'm saying is, you know, coming up in the early 90s as a teenager, coming into manhood, transitioning from a teen to a young adult, it was tough. At the same time, I'm learning about who I am as an Israelite. And, you know, the year again started with 1994 for me. And by, I want to say 1997, 1998, about 4 years later, like, I'm really, really all the way in. And you got to imagine in this time, nobody really knows what the hell an Israelite is.
Right.
In 1994, remember, there's no MySpace, there's no Facebook, there's no YouTube, there's no Instagram. There's no Clubhouse. These are the ways that most people find out that they're an Israelite today, through one of those avenues. Most people that consider themselves Israelites today is because of some kind of interaction they had with Israelites on one of those online outlets. But what I want to say for us, we had to be about this in an era where not only was it not known and not promoted, but it was definitely also simultaneously, not loved, because the only impression that people had, and I think this still exists today, of who an Israelite is, are the brothers on the corners.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So that was the first, challenge. When I came home, finally, Mommy, I'm an Israelite. My father, being a Rastafarian, he said, duh, because, most people have most people have somewhat of an understanding of what a Rastafarian is. Some people think a Rastafarian is someone that smokes weed all day and listens to Bob Marley. But, Rastafarians believe that the people of the African diaspora, the people who were brought to America, the Caribbeans, and wherever we went to in our transatlantic diaspora, Rastafarians believe we are the 12 tribes of Israel. So I always kind of had that, but I was just so young and never really paying attention to what my parents said, because, for us, a lot of children, your parents don't always have the biggest impression on you. Sometimes it's an outsider, especially if you had tough parents. Now, my parents beat my behind because it was Sunday. Why are you getting the beating? Because it's Monday. I got the work week started, and I just want to get off on the right foot. So I'm going to put this foot on your neck. I got a beating because it was Tuesday. What I'm trying to show you is I got beat. You know what I mean? And to be honest, I deserved all the whoopings that I got, and it made the man of me that I've become. Absolutely. But when you're disciplined so much, it's hard to look at your parents as the people who you also are going to listen to in other areas, because they beating your behind so much. And because I'm a human, you start to hate them. So any knowledge you kick in, I ain't trying to hear. You just beat my, you know what? I'm not trying to hear no knowledge you kick in. Maybe when you calm down with the whoopings, I'm going to try to listen to what you're saying. Right? So what I want to say is the Israelite community had such a huge impact on me because it didn't come from my immediate environment. And I was able to, for the first time, to really look at the Bible. My parents were never into the church. Again, my dad is a Rastafarian, so they were never into the church. But my mom has taken me and my brother and my sister to church. We have been to church with a grandmother or aunt before. And I got to tell you, and I mean this with all due respect, the highlight of church for me coming up before I was 14 years old was them damn donuts that they have during break. That was church, boy. That was church. They could be talking about the three wise men. They could be talking about Abraham at the mountain. And the only thing young Alex is thinking about is them donuts that's going to be in the back that I'm going to beat down.
That's right.
They don't got homemade donuts. No, they sent somebody to Dunkin' Donuts. They got donuts.
It's always about the snacks with the kids, man.
Always. But I got to tell you that.
So go ahead.
No. I want you to transition. Go ahead.
So let's think of it. So you meet your friends. That was around the time about 14. Shall I say?
Yeah, 14.
Around that time when you met them. So your first introduction coming in was entering into an assembly or a temple. And in that transition of someone, your father being a Rastafarian, of course, like you say, growing up and coming up, we all been to church with somebody, Big Mama or whoever. But your first introduction to seriousness of the Bible was through an assembly that was Torah only.
Yes.
And so that again, people don't understand how important it is to be able to have a conversation with someone versus you see and hear what they believe and then turn around and then you just attack them in that area aspect of things. And that was something that the Scene Black was talking to me about, and the thing is that I've always had the perspective is I don't look at each person and just say, okay, because I encountered one person, I'm going to put everybody in that line. And so I like to have a conversation, build with brothers, and find out like where they at, and sometimes you learn things about how someone was brought up. So let's kind of talk about that and transition into that, into what was the mindset like? And I know that there were others in Ashkenazis and other, especially being in New York, it's a big Jewish community there. Now, was the emphasis within the assemblies that you came up in that was Torah only? Was it like we have to learn biblical Hebrew because we have those white boys over there and they're heavy in learning and teaching their young and their kids biblical Hebrew? So was it any form of that type of thing, that because we're Black, they may think we're illiterate and they may try to run game on us? So we need to get in this Torah to understand it from the Hebrew perspective versus from a transliterated and translation perspective.
That's a great question. Let me first answer by saying this. So even though I began at a temple called Beth Shalom, like I said, a year later, I went to Shema Israel, headed by Prince Sapor, and may his memory be blessed, Chief of Chiefs, Chief Naphtali. That congregation was founded by a brother who is known as Nabi Raphael, which is Prophet Raphael. And he comes from the Rabbi Matthew's lineage.
Okay.
And it was the teachings of Rabbi Matthews that if we are going to call ourselves Jews, if we're going to call ourselves Israelites, we can't just connect with that in name. We also must connect with that in culture, which part of your culture certainly is your language. So even going back to the inception of the true rooted Israelite movement, I say true rooted Israelite movement as opposed to simply the Israelite movement, because some people regard the efforts of Cherry as being, the origin of it all. But the reality is those individuals didn't actually call themselves Israelites. They never went on record to say we are Israelites. They said that we are the people of the book. So I guess you can infer that they're saying they're Israelites, but they never actually identified as Israelites. They didn't have that. I don't want to say courage, because maybe that might be a little shady, because I know our ancestors were courageous. But I want to say that maybe they didn't have that spirit at that moment to just fully come out and say, you know what, I'm an Israelite. It was with the Rabbi Matthews community in 1919 with Rabbi Ford that this is the first time Black men in the African diaspora are identifying as Israelites. And he said, if we are to call ourselves Israelites in name, we must also identify in culture, which is why in the community that I come from, this is how we dress. This is, if you come to a average Sabbath service, you could turn on Shema Israel, you could turn on DCB channel. Shout out to Chief Uziel. Shout out to Chief Prince Jeriel. If you turn on these channels, you're going to see Israelites in cultural garments. Because this was the teaching. If we are to return to who we are, we must return in all aspects. So that's where the impetus came to learn Hebrew. It definitely didn't come from, and that's a good way to look at it. But I just want to make it clear that it definitely did not come from the impetus of being on the same page, if not higher than Europeans, because of what we were witnessing. It just really boiled back to the fundamental premise that if we are to connect to our national identity, we must also do so with culture, with your language is a major part of your culture. So that's where the impetus came to learn biblical Hebrew. And as you said, this was a school that was Old Testament only. And I think that aroused a lot of curiosity for me as well, because I always was reading the book from the back. Most of the churches that I went to, and most of you know this, most churches don't really go heavy in the Old Testament.
Right, that's true.
They'll go into the book of Psalms. They'll talk about David. But when you hear the church, they talking about judges.
Right.
When you hear the church, they talking about various kings in the book of Kings, Chronicles, even Ruth. You don't really find that, right? So my curiosity was really sparked by this community because for the first time, I got a glimpse at the Old Testament characters, something that none of the churches, at least in Brooklyn, New York, were giving me. And that inspired me to hear about, the valiant nature of David, Joshua. You mean the Bible don't got soft people? You mean the Bible that got people that look like the people that live in Red Hook, Brooklyn, that look like Flatbush, Brooklyn, that get down like Flatbush get down? So you got to understand, for a young kid like myself, who was a knucklehead, it was inspiring to know that the men of rank, the men of God, were warriors as well. They weren't just, intellectuals. They weren't just great spiritual people, but they were warriors for God. That was powerful for me and inspiring because in the 90s and in the 80s, coming up in Brooklyn, in order to survive, you had better be a warrior or you are not going to make it. So to know that the men of God that stood in the Bible were not just intellectuals, but were also warriors for God, that was very inspiring to me coming from the environment that I came from.
Awesome. Do you see there's a comment in the chat by Sister Shauna Shade. She's asking you a question about the land. Are you able to see that comment?
Yes, I'm able to see the comment. So we definitely know that the land of Israel is where we say it is today, is where it is believed to be today. Amir, bring the globe for me. Look up on my closet. Look in the closet and get the globe. We know that the land of Israel is where we describe it today as being right above Egypt and right below Mesopotamia, which is the Levant. We know it is because the Bible describes that to get from Kemet to Egypt, to get from Kemet to Israel is an 11-day journey. To get from ancient Kemet to Israel is 11-day journey. This is sub-Saharan Africa, right? All of the place names that the Bible has for Israel matches what we see here. The culture, which is significant about the regions of Egypt and the region of Canaan, matches this area. It does not agree with the culture of sub-Saharan Africa. So there are more than one ways to show and prove that the Israel of today is the Israel of ancient time. It is not America. I just came back from Las Vegas. The Grand Canyon is not a part of Egypt. But the reality is you can expect these type of inquisitions when we are so far removed from who we are as a people. So to us as teachers and leaders in the community, we should never be offended by questions, and we should always go out of our way to answer questions, because a lot of the questions are coming from the fact that we are so many years removed, so many thousands of years removed from our culture, our heritage, our land. So, I welcome these questions because I realize that we are just so far removed from who we are that people don't know what to believe.
I want to play a video real quick because this is something that I feel as though I've been trying to project throughout the community for some time. And then I saw you do a video on it where you were doing a teaching on it and whatnot. And so I felt it was very profound. I think I actually posted it on my Facebook page of this particular teaching, but I want to play it real quick. It's a short clip. And I want to play it so that way, and then I want you to kind of talk about it from there. Hold on, let me see here. Oh, that's not it. Are you able to see it?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right.
So in Exodus 3:14, it says, Eye Asher Eye, which they translate as Ahaya, and they say that this is the Creator's name. So let me show you something. The Aleph here is acting as a prefix, and it's the first person future. When you take the letter Aleph in Hebrew and you prefix it to a verb such as Haya, it becomes I will. So the verb Haya is the Kal stem for existence, which means to exist. We usually say he was. He was. Speaking of what we call the Kal stem in Hebrew, grammatically, he was. Asher can mean that which. Eye is repeated again. So it's literally saying, I am that I am. Or you can even say, I will be what I will be, because the Aleph is acting as the future tense. So what we first must understand is the shoresh here. How many people know what a shoresh is in Hebrew? Shoresh is what we're calling root in Hebrew, R-O-O-T. So the shoresh of this word is these three letters, He, Yod, He, Haya, which is the verb Haya. So that the Creator's name, Yod, He, Wav, He, is, let's go to the next slide so we can look at it. So in the top row is Pictographic Hebrew. How many people have seen these symbols represented in Hebrew? This is also known as Proto-Canaanite Hebrew. These inscriptions were found on the island of Elephantine in Egypt. They date as far back to the 21st century BCE and the 18th century BCE. So we're talking about the era of the patriarchs, but namely we're talking Joseph. These petroglyphs or rock carvings were found during the same period that Joseph is said to be living in the land of Egypt. From this script develops the script that you see here, which we refer to today as Paleo Hebrew. Some people even call it Canaanite Phoenician. And then finally we have here the Aramaic square script. And the point I wish to stress to you is this. In looking at the root of the Creator's name, the root is Haya. So that the Creator's name in Hebrew is basically formed from the past, present, and future tenses for the Hebrew word to exist, which is Haya. So you'll sometimes hear it on the Yom Kippur prayer, where we say, Haya, he was, Howe, he is, Yeh, he shall be. Haya, Howe, Yeh, he was, who is, who shall be. When we're reading like Adon Olam, you'll see all of these things come out. But we're really speaking in essence of the Tetragrammaton. And what you're essentially saying is that when you think of the Creator, you must understand that none of us in this room can define him. And we must understand that a name seeks to define the essence of the thing that it is naming. So in trying to captivate your mind with that thought, you must ask yourself a question. How do I name that which has no limitation? Because anytime you name something, you're defining it. And anytime you define something, philosophically speaking, you can only define that which has a limitation, that which has a beginning or an end, or that which you can completely fathom. Can anybody fathom God? No. So to the brilliance of the Creator in naming himself, because we don't give him his name, to the brilliance of the Creator in naming himself, he calls himself the self-existent eternal one, the one whose existence is truly existence, because all of our existence is dependent upon him. His existence is not dependent upon any of ours. So he's the only one that can truly be said to exist. Okay, so in moving on, there is no way that Eye, Asher, Eye, or to look at one of them and say that it's the Creator's name, because it doesn't give you the full spectrum and essence of the meaning of his name. The full spectrum and essence of his name is that he is the eternal one. Right. So if we're calling him Ahaya, or if we're calling him Eye, we're just capturing the future tense, I will. What about the past and the present? So you're actually missing a major component of his name when you limit it to Ahaya.
All right. Let me stop sharing that. Awesome, man. Listen, why is it, from your perspective, Moreh, is there a level of argument throughout our community with the name? I mean, it's I mean, if we really truly look at it, it's so many different names. Everybody has their perspective on what the creator's true name is and all of these things. But to sum it up, we're talking about, and I always say this, we're talking about the most intellectual being that we know, the creator of heaven and the earth, the Shamayim and the earth. I mean, do we actually think that he doesn't know who we're talking to when we're talking? Go ahead and share, or share. Go ahead, Moreh. I'm gonna turn it over to you, man. Go ahead and elaborate on that teaching.
Okay, that's an excellent point. That's a powerful idea. The people are saying that it didn't switch back to my screen. You can't see
Okay,
me.
hold on. I don't know if it's a delay or hold on. Let me see here. I have it on the speaker view. So it's switched. It's switching there. Can everybody see? Has it switched back? Has it switched back? If it switched back, put a 1 in the chat. If it switched back,
It's on you. It's on you. If you put it on full screen, it'll be on both of us.
Okay. Oh yeah, let me do that because I had it on speaker because when you were showing the globe, it blew it up. So all right, I put it back on gallery.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't know why it see it was switching on you. It's when you speak, it switches. When I speak, it switches. But now I got it on gallery mode, so I will just kind of leave it right here.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, it's back to normal. So let me say this. The conversation of the Creator's name is such a very important conversation. There are elements of having this dialogue, which should be common sense, which is what you brought up. What I mean by should be common sense is you brought up a very important point. You said, doesn't the Creator, the omniscient one, the all-knowing one, doesn't he know who you're referring to when you speak of him? Absolutely. Absolutely. However, when we speak of Ivrit, the holy tongue, Lashon HaKodesh, we're speaking of literally Sefat HaBeria. Sefat HaBeria, the language of creation.
Okay.
Remember, the Creator says that he spoke the universe into existence. When you go into the book of Psalms, chapter 33, verse 6, by the word of the Lord were the heavens made, and by the breath of his mouth, the host thereof. So speech is the tool of creation, right? The Torah opens up by saying, Wayomer Elohim, and God said. And the following statement is, Yehi or, Wayehi or, light, be light. So speech is a tool of creation. The language that he speaks, we know for a fact, is what we describe today as Hebrew, the holy tongue. How do we know that? When you go to the book of Zephaniah, the Creator says, coming is a day where he will convert the language of the peoples so that they should speak a pure tongue. But because we be reading, but we don't be reading, we really missed a lot. And, you know, I have a Torah class that I do every Tuesday. And I tell the class, a lot of times we are reading, but we are not reading. The text literally says, for then I will change or convert the language of the peoples to a pure language. He said the peoples. He's speaking of the Gentile nations. He's not including us because we are already in possession of that pure tongue, that pure language. That's why he says, I will convert the language of the peoples. Notice he doesn't say, I will convert or change the languages of the world, which would include everyone. But he says of the peoples, which in Hebrew is Amim. And that's always used in the Bible to refer to the Gentile nations. So if he's saying that he is going to convert the language of the Gentile nations, and he's obviously not referring to us because we are not a Gentile nation, it has to mean we are already in possession of the Lashon HaKodesh. So this brings me to an even more powerful point now, which is, since we know we have the holy tongue, we have to reason to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, names like God and Lord, when we say them, the Creator knows who we are talking about. Yes,
Okay.
we say Jehovah, he knows who we are talking about. But what we have to remember about language is that language is power in real time. Language is true energy. Remember, it's the tool of creation. Let me give you an example just using our language. In Hebrew, the word for thing is dabar.
Mm-hmm.
Simultaneously, it's also the word for matter. When I say matter, I'm literally speaking of it in a scientific sense. So in Hebrew, the same word which gives you matter or thing is dabar. That same word in Hebrew is the Hebrew word for speech. Why is it in the Hebrew language that the word for thing or matter and the word for speech are the exact same word?
Mm.
Because everything you speak becomes something.
Mm.
Everything you speak becomes something. That truth is only brought out in our language because, again, our language is Sefat HaBeria, the language of creation, or Sefat HaEmet, the language of truth. So in our language, there are more powerful ideas expressed by going into the language. Let me
Mm-hmm.
give you a glimpse at what I'm talking about. If I was to ask everyone on the live right now, what is righteousness? And we're going to do that. Can we have everyone in the chat room tell us what is the definition of righteousness? Watch this quick experiment. What is the definition of righteousness? Anybody. You can give me the Hebrew definition, which is the word zedek. You can tell me what that means, or you can give me a generalization. What does the word righteousness mean? I'm going to show you by use of this example why speaking the Creator's name in the Holy Tongue is saying much more.
Mm-hmm.
What is righteousness, family? If you guys can type it in the chat room. Someone give us a working definition of the word for righteousness. What does righteousness mean? Anybody?
They probably got like a 10-second delay or something like that.
Okay.
So we
All
probably have
right.
to give them a couple seconds.
Okay. You know, with that being said, some of the things that you'll see as a definition, somebody says the Most High law. Perfect. Righteousness is following the Creator's law. Absolutely. The Bible says following the Creator's law is righteousness. But I just want to be clear. That's not the definition, however. We still aren't. So you're telling me how we achieve righteousness. We achieve righteousness by following his law. But the question is, what is righteousness? That's the question. Not the method for attaining it, because your answers are all right, but you're really describing the method for attaining righteousness, whereas the question simply is, what is righteousness? Covered by Yah. I want you to look at the answers, because the answers
Yeah. That's what
are
I'm saying.
very
Everything that accomplishes in the will of Yah, covered by
now
Yah.
now let's do this. Some of you know that I also teach biblical Hebrew, right? So I want to say this. The Hebrew word for righteousness is zedek. The Hebrew word for righteousness is zedek. Zedek is spelled in biblical Hebrew Zadeh, Kof, and then you have the Hebrew letter, Zadeh, Dalet, Kof. Zadeh, Dalet, Kof. Zadeh, Dalet, Kof. It's a compound word.
Mm-hmm.
The first part of the word for righteousness in Hebrew is Zad or Zedah, which in Hebrew is a hunter. If you want to say hunt in Hebrew or a hunter, it's Zedah. Why is it that the Hebrew word for righteousness is rooted in the Hebrew word for hunting or pursuing? Keep that in mind. The last letter in the word righteousness is the letter Kof. The letter Kof. The letter Kof means to emulate. When you look up the letter Kof in a dictionary, it says to encircle. To encircle. But what we don't realize is that that definition is not literal, because when you circle something, you are observing it. You ever watch like old school karate fight flicks where two masters are about to fight. And before they fight, what do you always see them doing in the old Kung Fu flicks? They circle each other.
Yep.
Because what are they doing? They're sizing each other up.
Mm-hmm.
They're studying one another. So to encircle something conceptually means to study it. So the Hebrew letter kof means to observe, to emulate, or to study. To observe, to emulate, or to study. So watch this. The word for righteousness in Hebrew is literally composed of the word zedah, which is to hunt or to pursue, and then the Hebrew letter kof, which means to emulate. By the way, the Hebrew letter kof is the initial letter in the Hebrew word kadosh, holy. When you begin to learn the Hebrew language, you will realize that the first letter in any given Hebrew name, it is the foundation stone in the letter, in the word of that name. Just like the first thing you lay at a construction site is the foundation stone, the first letter in any Hebrew word represents the foundation stone of that word's meaning. So in the Hebrew letter kuf, which is the initial or first letter in the word kadosh, remember kadosh means to be holy.
Holy, yeah.
Or to be set apart, some people say, right? So watch this. The word zedek, which is translated in the Bible as righteousness, in Hebrew, it's a compound. The first part, zedah, means to hunt or pursue. And the last letter, kof, means holiness. So the word for righteousness in Hebrew literally means he or she who is in pursuit of holiness. Isn't that far more deep than us saying righteousness? Isn't that far more explicit and descriptive than us saying obeying the laws? This is why we have to come back to the language, because the language shows us more about our own culture and even about our God. So in speaking the Creator's name in the language that his name is spoken in, that becomes a powerful experience, because remember, when you speak something, you are bringing something into existence. So every time you say the Creator's name, can you imagine the creative spark occurring around you in that moment? And I'm not being pseudo,
right,
or am I being, superstitious, but I'm just giving it to you in the real way. Can you imagine, since we know that everything we speak becomes something, since we know that when the Creator spoke, the universe comes into existence, can you imagine that when you evoke his name, utilizing the holy tongue, can you imagine or even fathom what is occurring around you in that moment? This is why our ancestors placed great emphasis on calling his name. Remember, any name we give in English is a transliteration.
that's right.
Transliteration is always filtered. You know, when you dilute something and it don't taste the same? Listen, I like my Kool-Aid with sugar. Don't put too much water in that Kool-Aid, because you now have diluted it and I can't taste the Kool-Aid.
Right.
So when we are speaking the Creator's name in foreign languages, we can't taste it. It has lost its spark. It has lost its flavor. It has lost its vibrancy. It has lost its spiritual efficaciousness. Its spiritual efficaciousness or spiritual effectiveness. It is no longer spiritually efficacious when we are speaking it outside. Now, to the common sense, does he still know who you're talking about? Absolutely. But what we must know is that there is real power in real time when you are speaking. What we say is Lashon HaKodesh, the holy tongue.
Now, this is the thing, because there's been kind of a controversy going around this Lashon Kwadash. Now, when you say that, are you referring to the controversy about Lashon Kodash, or are you speaking about something else? I just want to clear that up, because there's going to be some people that watching this, and many of them feel as though you have to deal on the level of what they consider maybe Paleo Hebrew, or which they associate that with Lashon Kodash, or Are you saying, I know, because there are people that deal with modern and biblical Hebrew and things like that. So what are you referring to, Moreh? I just want to make sure that it's clear.
That's a good point. Good question. The word or the term Lashon HaKodesh. Lashon is how you say tongue or language. HaKodesh just simply means holy or holiness. So Lashon HaKodesh is the holy tongue or the holy language. Now, our One West brothers, they prefer to say Lashawan Kwadash.
Yeah.
Lashawan Kwadash. And I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to be nice. But I want to say with a great level of humility, not correcting people because we feel that those people will become offended by us correcting them. So we choose not to correct them. Guess what we're doing when we do that? We're hustling backwards. Can you imagine a teacher afraid to teach because the student will be offended because what the teacher is teaching is actually correcting something that the student has been saying in error? Can you imagine any teacher that would actually say, I can't say this because the person I'm talking to is going to be offended because I'm actually correcting something they've been doing in error? No teacher does that, because at the end of the day, we teach to inspire. We teach to empower. We teach to correct. So in teaching to correct, there is no such thing as Lashawan HaKodash. It's a made-up language. The Hebrew language has many tones to it. The Hebrew language has many tones to it. There is no language on the face of the earth with a single tone to it. As evidence of that, you can go to Yemen. The Yemenite Jews do not co-sign the Israelis in the land. The Yemenite Jews actually refer to them as imposters. The Yemenite Jews do not follow anything that the European Jews teach. But guess what they do recognize? They do recognize the various tones in the language. So a Yemenite Jew will say shalom. He won't say shalom.
Yeah.
So we have to do a little bit more research, because most of us, when we choose to divorce ourselves from what we believe is the European way of speaking the language, what we're really trying to do is divorce ourselves from being connected to how Europeans practice any part of our culture. That's what we're really trying to do. But the question we should ask ourselves is, how far are we going to distance ourselves from them, to the extent that we might actually be distancing ourselves from something that is true? So we know that they picked up our Torah. Should we not follow the Torah because they got their hands on it? The Torahs that are printed today, the European man prints. None of us have a problem with that. We accept the Torah as they present it to us, but it's the other things that we believe they have added that we don't accept, such as the Masoretic. We all believe or teach as Israelites that European Jews come into conversion in the year 740 AD. Is that correct? Okay. The Masoretic tradition begins in the 5th century AD, which is the 400s. It reaches its peak during the 600s. The Masoretic tradition is here 300 years before we have a European Jew. And the Masoretic scribes preserve the way the language is pronounced. Why is that important? Well, anyone who knows biblical Hebrew knows why it's important to preserve the language the way it is pronounced, because in biblical Hebrew, it's the way that you pronounce a word that gives the word its meaning. If you want to say one in Hebrew, you can say achat, or you could look at the letter aleph. That's one. If I want to represent 1,000 in Hebrew, I say elef. Notice the difference between 1 and 1,000 is a vowel shift. One in Hebrew is aleph, 1,000 is elef. All I did was shift the pronunciation. Then when you go into the book of Genesis 36, which describes the Edomite chiefs, the word used for chief is aluf, or alufim in the plural, but aluf in the singular. So the word aleph, which means one, Changing the pronunciation, it becomes Elef 1000. Changing it again to Aluf, it becomes chief or master, teacher, or guide, as in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 3, verse 4, when Jeremiah says of the Creator, you are the Aluf of my youth. You are the Aluf of my youth. You are the master guide, guiding me since youth. The word used there is Aluf. Then you open up the book of Job, chapter 33, verse 33, where Elihu, the youngest of those who are critiquing Job, he says, listen, and I will teach you wisdom. The word for teach you wisdom is Aleph Ka. Aleph Ka. Aleph means teach and Ka means you. Aleph Ka means teach you. So the word Aleph also means to teach. All I did was change the phonetics, but we're dealing with the same three consonants. It's the way that we sound words that give words its meaning. This is why people have to be corrected when they are saying things incorrectly. Because if you're not speaking it the way it should be spoken, you're actually saying something else. Shalom means peace. Shalom means complete or wholeness. Shalom is peace. Shalom means wholeness or completeness. Those are two different concepts.
Right.
They're synonymous, but they're not exactly the same. There is a nuance of difference between the idea of peace and the idea of completion or perfection. God can give us shalom right now, but do we have shalom? Completeness, perfection, wholeness? The Messianic era will bring shalom. Right now, we might have a semblance of shalom, peace, but we don't have shalom, perfection, wholeness, completeness until the Messianic era. So this is why I say it's very important to speak things. When you're speaking the language, you had better know something about it, because there are words in Hebrew that we think are different, but if you were reading it in the language, you'd be like, wow. So let me throw this one on your viewing audience. When you ask the average Israelite, what does the word kadosh, holy, what does it mean? What does everyone say? Set apart.
Set apart.
Set apart. Let me tell you this. Watch that set apart talk, because you can be set apart to do anything. You can be set apart to do that which is right, or you could be set apart to do that which is wrong. But don't take my word for it. Open the Torah. The temple harlot, the Bible calls her a quadesha. The same word, quadosh, but it feminizes it. It adds the letter hey, quadesha, because she's also set apart. But she's set apart to be a whore.
Wow.
So be careful with this, I'm set apart, and you just leave it at that. Because to somebody who's familiar with our culture, what are you set apart to do? Because the quadesha, the temple harlot, she's also set apart, but she's set apart to be a harlot. The word kadosh, which we translate as holy, there is a significant level that we can see means to set apart, but it's much more than that. And this is where knowing Hebrew comes in hand. The word kadosh in Hebrew is the letter kuf and dosh. Kuf and dosh. Kuf means holiness or to emulate. Dosh is a cadence in Hebrew. The word dash in Hebrew means to walk in perfect cadence. You know, like when you observe how the Chinese military march, you see 1,000 men legs move the same exact time as if it's the movement of one man. In the language of the military, that's called perfect cadence. Perfect cadence. So the word dash in Hebrew, dalet aleph shin, or just dalet shin, that means to walk in perfect cadence. The initial letter in the word kadosh is the letter kuf, which is holiness. So how do we achieve a holiness? By emulating the Creator, by walking perfectly according to his Torah. That's why the language used in the Bible for coming close to God is always walk with me. What did God tell Abraham? Walk with me and be thou perfect. What do we hear about Enoch? He walked with God. This is why it comes into modern Hebrew when speaking of the Torah as halakha. Some Israelites say, oh, that's that Jewish term for law. No, halak means to walk. And throughout the Bible, following God's law is always used with the term halak, to walk. So the word kadosh, which we translate in English as holy or set apart, in perfect Hebrew, it means to emulate the Creator by perfectly walking in his will. That is much more impactful than saying set apart, because even the temple harlot is set apart. She's called a Quadesha.
Wow. Let me ask. I want to ask you one more question before we kind of transition. I've heard some in a different kind of community that comes against Israelites. I've heard them say there's no verifiable evidence of what is called paleo or pictograph. I think what is it, the Canaanite symbolisms of Hebrew or whatnot. They said there's no evidence of that. And I know when you were teaching the lesson about the
We went out for a minute, but I can hear you now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Can you hear? Okay, what are your thoughts on that? That there is no from a different community that comes against Israelites. What is your thoughts that says that there is no such thing as historical evidence for pictographic Hebrew or the Canaanite Phoenician Hebrew or whatnot? There's no many call paleo, or they would use the pictographs or whatnot. What are your thoughts on that?
So pictographic Hebrew, I mean, there's tons of evidence for it, right? We can start with the island of Elephantine that borders Kemet. In Elephantine Island, Dr. Petrie, Flinders Petrie, who is considered the father of modern archaeology. Flinders Petrie made a discovery near the island of Elephantine in what is described as the Turquoise Mountains. And the discovery that he makes is a particular script consisting of 22 characters. What other language in the world has 22 characters other than Hebrew? But he comes across a script with exactly 22 characters, and it looks like hieroglyphs, but it's not coherent to those who read hieroglyphs. Me being a person who now also teaches Medunetra, when I look at the Petrie glyphs or the petroglyphs known as Proto-Canaanite, because this is the academic term for pictographic Hebrew, is Proto-Canaanite or Proto-Sinaitic. Proto-Sinaitic, right? So this particular script looks like hieroglyphs, but when you read them, it's not coherent because they don't match any hieroglyphic vocabulary words that we know. So that means whoever is writing this, it appears that they're using a script similar to hieroglyphs, but that script is being used to speak another language. And this is essentially what our forefather Joseph does in Egypt. Joseph takes, and I could say this now because I know hieroglyphs. There was a time that I would have thought that this was wrong. But I want to say something to the community, which may be accepted or may not be accepted. But as a teacher, when you speak truth, you're not speaking it on the basis that people will accept it. You're speaking it on the basis that you know it's true. The pictographic Hebrew alphabet is, in fact, a direct derivative of the Medunetra or the ancient hieroglyphs. That's a fact. All of its letters essentially come from the hieroglyphic script. So what Joseph does while he's in Egypt, he takes the Medunetra, he takes the hieroglyphs, and he uses them to pen the Hebrew language. Because at that point in the land of Egypt, Egypt was not yet an empire. She does not yet have contact with a lot of different parts of the world. So the language that everyone is using in Egypt is exclusively hieroglyphs. Cuneiform is the lingua franca of the ancient world, but cuneiform hasn't really hit Kemet at this time because Egypt isolated herself, because Egypt is so full of herself. So Egypt at that point is an isolate. She's an isolate. She's not really contacting with other nations around the period of Joseph, which is the 1700s BCE. She's an isolate. She's only basically communicating with the Libyans in the north and the people of Nubia below her, the Cushites, right? So the language that she uses is hieroglyphs. So Joseph now, knowing that he has his brothers and sisters and a growing Asiatic population, because history attests that during the reign of the Hyksos is when you begin to see an explosion of an Asiatic population in ancient Kemet or in ancient Egypt. So Joseph now, trying to make do with what he has, he knows that there's an exploding population of an Asiatic population of Semitic-speaking people. Yet there's really no Semitic script. So in his brilliance, he takes the ancient Egyptian Metanetra or hieroglyphs, and he composes a series of glyphs for his people. It's a creation of his own, but it's a creation which is in fact based on hieroglyphs. That is a fact. It's based on hieroglyphs. So let me take you in deep waters for a moment so you can really understand what I'm saying. There are Israelites that actually believe that the oldest Hebrew script is the pictographic script, and that this script right here is the Yiddish, right? That's what we hear in the Israelite community. That's the Yiddish, Well, remember, Yiddish is Yiddish is a dialect. There is no script called Yiddish. You know how? If you open the Dead Sea Scrolls, which begin in 250 BC, which is 950 years before a European Jew, the Dead Sea Scrolls use this same script. So how could this be the Yiddish when the Dead Sea Scrolls utilize this exact same script? That means we got a lot of studying to do. So let me say this to you. What Joseph achieves in ancient Kemet is he takes the hieroglyphs and creates a script for us to use to speak our language in place of our own script. And here's the thing about it. As proof that the pictographic Hebrew script cannot truly be our first script, I want you to think about it. The word Aleph in the pictographic script is an ox. The letter Aleph is an ox. When the Creator creates the universe, if we believe, because some Israelites don't believe, if we believe he does so with Hebrew, how could the script be an ox? Let me say it again in case you guys miss it. If we believe that the language of creation is Hebrew or the Holy Tongue, how could the script associated with that language be pictographic Hebrew when the first pictographic script is the letter Aleph and it's an ox? Remember, when the Creator spoke the universe into existence, nothing existed but him. So how could the letters used to create the script represent things that don't even exist yet? How could pictographic Hebrew, I want you to really listen to me. How could pictographic Hebrew represent the genesis of our language when pictographic Hebrew incorporates so many elements of nature? Nature wasn't created yet.
That's right.
When the world was created, nothing was here yet. Pictographic Hebrew incorporates so many elements of nature, just like the hieroglyphs. So we know the hieroglyphs are not even the oldest script because it incorporates elements of creation, elements of nature. Whatever the Creator uses to create the world must be something that precedes everything that exists in the world. Whatever the Creator uses to create the world must be something that precedes all of the elements that exist in the world.
Wow.
But watch this. You said I missed the controversial, so I'm going to give you some controversy.
I told you.
When Israelites see this, they say it's the Yiddish, even though the reality is this is the script used for the Dead Sea Scrolls, so it's not
Right.
Yiddish, right?
Would it be Yiddish because they added the vowel points to it? Was it without vowel points in the Dead Sea Scrolls?
The Dead Sea Scrolls don't add the nikud, the vowel points. That's a great point.
Okay. All right.
Right?
Okay.
That's a
Okay.
great point. But the actual script itself is definitely not Yiddish because, again, a simple dictionary search could show us that there is no script called Yiddish. Like when you
Right.
look up
Right.
the word Yiddish online, and I'm asking everyone to do that. I want you guys to fact check me live. When you look up the word Yiddish online, it'll tell you that it's a Euro-Germanic language that incorporates various elements of Hebrew. It's a Euro-Germanic language, so it's first German with
Right.
a little bit of Hebrew, and then this is the kicker, which uses Hebrew letters to write its language. No different than the fact that Spanish is the same as English letters, except there are accents on the English letters to indicate that we're looking at Spanish.
Right.
If you're a screenwriter and you're writing a play and it's a Spanish play, there is no Spanish alphabet. You're using English with accented marks on it. So the Spanish language utilizes English letters, right, in order to speak its language. Yiddish utilizes Hebrew letters in order to speak its language. Now, here's my point. Some Hebrews who have a little bit more knowledge, they say, okay, all right, Zion is right. But here's the thing, Zion. Ezra the scribe gave us this script in Babylon, which is true. That's a fact. This is sometimes referred to in the Israelite community as the Babylonian script. But I can easily tell you why that's wrong. Because the Babylonians wrote using cuneiform. This is not the Babylonian script. Yes, it is a fact that Ezra gave us this script in Babylon, but it is not a Babylonian script because a simple Google search will show you that Babylonians wrote using cuneiform. So what does Ezra give us in Babylon, and more importantly, why? Well, remember when Ezra comes on the scene. He comes on the scene right after this destruction of Babylon by the Persians. What happened on that same night? During the night that Babylon was destroyed and the Persians took over, don't we read about the infamous handwriting on the wall? A script that appears that no one could read? Only person that could read the script that was on the wall was Daniel. But I need you to pay attention and notice something. If you're really familiar with the book of Daniel, when Daniel doesn't know something, he prays and entreats the angel Gabriel, and the angel Gabriel reveals the mysteries to him. Don't take my word for it. Go to Daniel 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Notice that when Daniel doesn't know something, he explicitly says, the text records that he has to seek the angel Gabriel for the answer. But when Daniel is called out to read the infamous handwriting on the wall, he comes out and reads it like a person who teaches it without going to Gabriel. So clearly, the knowledge of this script was known by the prophets long before the infamous handwriting on the wall. Knowledge of whatever this script is was known by our prophets of old and even our priesthood of old, even though it was not used by the general populace. This is why knowing our oral tradition is so important, because our oral tradition says that this script here is the script that the Creator spoke the universe into existence, which is why I'm holding it up so you guys could see something. The Bible says man was formed in the image of God. Don't you know it's only using this script that you really get to see that? Because when you take the tetragrammaton, God's name in this script, and you write it out linearly, it literally looks like the shape and form of man. You cannot do that with Paleo Hebrew. You cannot do that with Pictographic Hebrew. You can only do that with the infamous handwriting on the wall. You said I'm Mr. Controversial, so I'm not going to come on your show and not give you some controversy. So I want you to notice that, and I'm going to close the point on that here. I want you to notice that when Ezra gives us this script was literally right after the handwriting on the wall, right after a script appears that no one ever saw before. Ezra now gives us a script which also no one ever saw before. So what is Ezra doing? He takes the script from the handwriting on the wall and gives it to the people. Why does he do so? Because the script we've been using for many years, Paleo Hebrew, is not Lashon HaKodesh. How do we know that? Paleo Hebrew is derived from pictographic Hebrew, just like we talked about earlier. But pictographic Hebrew comes from hieroglyphs. The pictographic Hebrew letters, characters, are a direct derivation. And when I say this, guys, I'm not saying this as a novice. I'm saying this as someone who actually teaches Medu Neter in the community, someone who actually teaches the language of the hieroglyphs in our community. You know, I'm definitely not speaking from the vantage point of someone who's just looking at Google. I actually teach hieroglyphs. I actually conduct hieroglyphic courses. So when I say this, I'm speaking with great authority, and I want to let you know, pictographic Hebrew comes from hieroglyphs, and Paleo Hebrew comes from pictographic Hebrew. So how could Paleo Hebrew be the original script of creation when it's a direct derivative of pictographic Hebrew, which is a direct derivative of the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs? However, this script here was never used by the Canaanites. Paleo Hebrew was used by the Canaanites. This script here was never used by the Babylonians. How can Paleo Hebrew or pictographic Hebrew be set apart when the filthiest of nations used it? How could it be holy when the Canaanite nations that the Creator bans are the same people using it? I mean, sometimes in dialogues like this, common sense has to be introduced. How can we speak of Paleo Hebrew as being set apart as a script when we can go in Canaan land and find Canaanite inscriptions in Paleo Hebrew? I challenge you to find a single Canaanite inscription using this language. I challenge you to find a single Babylonian inscription using this script right here. You can't. This is truly set apart because this is Sefat Haberia, the language and even the script of creation. And by the way, that's the reason why European Jews, by the way, don't use Paleo Hebrews when a Tanakh is produced. No one ever even questioned that. Surely European Jews know what Paleo Hebrew is. They live in the land of Israel. I'm sure they can see Paleo Hebrew, right? Why is it that they don't use it? They don't use Paleo Hebrew because it is not our original script. Paleo Hebrew as a script was even used by the Canaanites. How can we speak of that as being set apart? But this script that I just showed you, no one used that in history but the children of Israel. You don't get more set apart than that.
Man, look, man, the chat on fire. The chat on fire. A couple people asked a question about the garment. They was asking where you get that from or something like that. Then somebody else also asked about signing up for the class, Hebrew class. So I'll towards the end, if I forget, brother, just remind me because I want to make sure that that information gets out to them or whatnot about the classes and stuff like that. So all right, so I think that's perfect. So let's get into something else. Matter of fact, you know what? I was planning on going to something else, but I'm going to go to another area because you kind of segue us into that, and it was dealing with the teaching when you were at the museum. So I'm gonna go into that real quick, and I want to show that. Let me see. Let's see, do I got it right here? Let's see. Oh no, that's not the right one. And this is something that is, you're talking about controversial. This right here is definitely something that I found rather controversial here, especially within those that were in the community, in the Christian community. I think this is kind of very interesting. And you probably know where I'm going at when you look at this this video here. Hold on, let's see. Let me play it.
What we're looking at right here is a funerary scenery. In this particular scenery, you have the Sioux plant. It forms the word Sioux. The oval is a bread loaf, and it makes the T sound. And the table, and it has bread on it, showbread, it's Hotep, so it's actually HTP. And this is the T sound. The triangle that you're looking at gives you the D sound, and the single reed leaf gives you I. So far you have a Hotep de Nisut, which means an offering which the king gives. And the reed leaf gives you the I sound, the water symbol gives you an N, and the mat gives you a P. So that's Anubis, or in the Egyptian language, Anpu. So this is saying Hotep de Nasut, an offering which the king gives to the god Anubis, or in the language of the hieroglyphs, Anpu. The head that you see in profile is Tep. It's how you say first, chief, or beginning. And the mat again gives you the P sound. So this literally is a title of Anubis, calling him the foremost chief. So it's Tep and then Tooth. That hill that you see gives you the T sound, and the F is the snake, and it's acting as a masculine pronoun. So it literally translates as an offering which the king gives to Anubis, he who sits, and this is the reed leaf again, giving you the I or A, and then the cross gives you the M, and the chick gives you U. So it's Amut. He who sits upon his hill, that's Tep Tooth, upon his hill, Amut, embalmed in the chamber of mummification. These are all titles of Anubis. Anubis is he who sits upon his hill, or Tep Tooth, and it says Amut, which literally means the dweller in the chamber of embalmment. What this is signifying here is extremely significant. The loaf that we're looking at here gives you the sound Neb, which is like Lord. And the symbol here with the two edges pointing down, that's Ta. That's the symbol for land. So it's actually calling Anubis the Lord of the land, or the Lord of the cemetery, because this is again a funerary scenery, so we're talking about the afterlife. The hill that you're looking at gives you the Q sound, and the R gives you the mouth gives you an R sound, and the loop gives you an S. This is QRS, or Christ. Why is that so significant? In Christianity, Christ is the one who prepares you for life eternal. In this funerary scene, Anubis is preparing the dead body for life eternal. The only difference is this scenery predates Christianity by almost 1,500 years. So that means 1,500 years before Christianity is on the world scene, you have Anubis being described as the one who prepares you for life eternal. And obviously, this is the sepulcher, or the dead body, in the coffin or the sarcophagus, and it's referred to in the language of the hieroglyphs or the Medunetta as a sahu, which means the mummy. So again, this is an offering which the king gives to Anpu, or Hotep de Nasut, Anpu Tep Tooth, which means he who sits upon his hill. And then you have the reed leaf, which is the I, and then you have the cross, which is the M, and you have the quail chick, which gives you an U, and again you have the bread loaf, which gives you a T. So that's Amut, he who sits upon his hill, and then the word Amut, which means the dweller in the chamber of embalmment, because again, this is a funerary scene. And lastly, we see the hill, which gives you Q, and we see the mouth, which gives you R, and we see the loop, which gives you S. That's QRS, or Christ. In the Egyptian native language called Medunetta, but it was called by the Greeks hieroglyphics, The term Christ literally means the one who prepares you for life eternal or the afterlife. So that later on in Christianity, the term Christ was applied to Jesus because he is also the one that prepares you for life eternal or the afterlife.
All right. All right. So let me stop sharing here and get back to the brother. Let me ask you this, brother Lexx here. Did you get any pushback about that from any Christians or maybe any Messianic brothers?
That's a very good question.
Hold on. Go ahead.
That's a very good question. And to answer that question very real and straight, I wouldn't say pushback, as I got a lot of people who just signed up for my classes. People were amazed to see these connections. People were amazed to realize that the Greek term Christ originates in Egypt. The idea that we get of Christ does not originate in Egypt, but the terminology, the language, the word Christ, we say it's a Greek word, Christos. But what we forget, what two peoples and cultures impact Greece so much that we can find loan words from those cultures in the Greek language? Those are the Hebrews and the Egyptians. Many Greek words come from their influence in Egypt. Many Greek words comes from their influence with the Jews, the Hebrews. So the word Christos, Christ, it comes from Kemet. The coffin that you guys were looking at in that video, that's from a queen known as Hennet. You can go on the Met Museum website, the Metropolitan Museum. You can literally type in online. I never say things that I tell people and just leave it at that. I always say, fact check it. More importantly, because anybody can say, check it out, read it, Google it. I actually help you. I want everyone, if you're looking at this video from an alternate device, open up a web browser on your phone, on your tablet, somewhere else, on a different device. Make sure you keep this one open. Type in Met Museum, M-E-T, Museum. Then I want you to type in H-E-N-H-E-N-E-T, Hennet. That is a priestess, a female priest. That's her coffin. And her coffin opens up with a basic Egyptian funerary offering or prayer. And it says, Hotep Deni Sut Anpu, Tep Tuf Imut Neb Dejer, which is an offering which the king gives to the god Anubis, who is the foremost chief, he who stands upon his hill, the lord of the cemetery. And then these are all his titles. And his last title, he's called the Christ. He's called the Christ by the Egyptians because Anubis is the one in Egyptian mythology that prepares the mummified dead for resurrection or life eternal. It is in, let me see if I can actually show you guys too. It is in
Moreh, are you saying that the Greeks stole from the Egyptians? Is that what you're saying?
Well, one thing we know about the Greeks, they stole from everybody. That's why when you go to the British Museum, right? When you go to the British Museum, as a matter of fact, let me take this cover off. That's why when you go, I have to hold it this way. That's why when you go to the British Museum, you're going to see archives throughout history from all of Africa and even all of the world. There's a controversy brewing right now by and against the curators of the museum. People from all parts of the world, even the European world, they want their artifacts back. Most of the artifacts in the British Museum were stolen. But let me show you this. This person right here, this is Anubis with the jackal head. We're looking at what's called the Paprus of Ani. The Paprus of Ani. In the Paprus of Ani,
I remember you did a teaching on that. You did a powerful teaching on that.
Okay. In the Paprus of Ani, Ani the scribe, he's dead. And in Egyptian mythology, no one dies. We transition, which is also our teaching. We don't die, we're energy. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So in the Egyptian mythology, in trying to explain what happens after life, the Egyptians take the deceased Ani and present him before Anubis, and Anubis brings him before who the Egyptians believe is the judge of all the world, Osiris. Osiris is regarded as God. But I want you to notice it is Anubis that is preparing Ani to meet God. So in Egyptian mythology, life eternal or resurrection does not happen without morality. Just like us, in the Torah, we say you have to have morality to have resurrection. Even physical resurrection here, you have to have morality and ethics. You have to have righteousness. The Egyptians, you know, when the Bible condemns Egypt, we have to understand something. It doesn't take away from their wisdom. I'm going to say it again. When the Bible condemns Egypt, we have to understand something. It does not take away from their wisdom. Yes, they were wicked. We were wicked too. Yes, they had pagan beliefs. We follow pagan beliefs too, right in the Bible. But it didn't mean we weren't a wise people. Because remember, in the Bible describing the wisdom of Solomon, it says, and he was greater than all, his wisdom was greater than all the men of the East. And his wisdom surpassed even that of Egypt. But y'all don't hear me. In describing the wisdom of Solomon, the Bible says it was greater than all of the wise men in the East. And it was greater and surpassed that of Egypt. Why would we compare King Solomon's wisdom to Egypt if there is no wisdom in Egypt? If we're talking about greatness, greatness is only compared against greatness. So if we're having a conversation about who the best basketball players are, you're probably going to hear Jordan. You're probably going to hear Kobe. You're probably going to hear LeBron James. You're not going to hear Donald Trump. You're not going to hear, but Obama got a nice three. Obama kind of nice from the paint, No. Greatness is only compared with what we know to be great. The fact that King Solomon's wisdom is compared with Egypt is the Bible letting you know even the Egyptians had wisdom. Don't get it twisted. Yes, they followed a pagan system, but even we did.
Let me ask you, because I think it was Dr. Ben. I think it might have been Dr. Ben. And Dr. Ben talked about, and of course you know this, I want you to kind of elaborate on it. Because a lot of the brothers, can you hear me? I want to make sure my screen didn't freeze. Can you hear me there?
Loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, there you go. All right. Dr. Ben, yeah, I can hear you now. Dr. Ben's made a statement about, because a lot of brothers in the Kemetic tradition love to say that we stole, our Torah was stole and copied from their Nasuts, shall I say, or the Metanetta or whatever. But Dr. Ben made it clear that the only thing that made Kemet great in its aspects of they were the first ones to write things down and keep records versus having an oral tradition like many of the other nations. They were the first ones to actually just say, hey, we're going to write, not just have an oral tradition, but we're going to write it down. What's your thoughts on it? Go a little bit more into that, Moreh.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I was actually the one that shared the same video clip that you're mentioning. That video clip not only is extremely hard to find, but you literally won't find it on the internet. Yeah. I didn't get it from the internet. I got it from a personal archive of a friend of mine. I won't reveal that friend's name, but I got it from a personal archive of a friend of mine who was a student of Dr. Ben. And he said, I think you'd be interested in design. And he sent it to me, and I clipped it, and I shared it on my YouTube page. And in the video clip, Dr. Ben is with the host of Like It Is. Gil Bailey.
Mm-hmm.
And Gil Bailey is questioning Dr. Ben about the greatness of Kemet. And Dr. Ben says, the greatness of Kemet, oh no, we're actually, all right. That clip comes from Dr. Ben speaking at a university here in New York City. And he's sitting down and he's asked to speak about ancient Kemet. And he says, the greatness of Kemet is that she records her culture in stone. That is the greatness of Kemet. And he said, saying that Kemet is the oldest civilization is like saying that a rabbit is a bird. You cannot, because you cannot be further removed from the truth than that. He says Kemet is not only not the oldest nation, but he said, in fact, she's the youngest of those bordering the Nile. And then he goes on to say that the people of Kemet and the greatness that they reach is not in her culture, is not in her laws, is not in her moral system, but the greatness of Kemet is that no one beats her in recordation. The ancient Egyptians record everything in stone. And that is the greatness of Kemet, still to this day. However, when it comes to the idea of the 10 Commandments, this is why a deep and invasive study of our tradition is important. If you ask the average Israelite right now, and I'm going to ask, when was the Exodus? Give me a date. When was the Exodus? I'm going to put everyone to the test. Tell me, what is the date of the, we all believe the Exodus happened. We all believe that the Exodus is history. But I want to admit to you something, Moreh. It was not until I started battling many of the people in the conscious community that I realized the importance of chronology. It is very hard to speak of something as being historical and you don't even have a chronology. You can't say what time period it's in. You can't give all of the details that would make something historical. Then how could you say something is historical when you're not giving that information with the details necessary to make it historical? So I'm going to ask again, everybody, please, no right or wrong answers. This is just another experiment. What is the date of the Exodus? Does anybody know? I'm going to give a couple.
Moreh, I think it's kind of, it may be, I mean, the first thing is even trying to get them to understand, you know, this whole 400 years of being enslaved in Egypt. That's a whole different type of thing, because many believe that Israel was enslaved for 400 years. But then the other aspect is Israel wasn't actually in physical slavery for 400 years, but around 200 and some odd years. And then they were in Goshen, you know, for 200 and some odd years. So that I think that's kind of the question we got to get cleared up even within the whole community.
That's right. That's a great point. And this is why our oral tradition is significant, because listen to this. History knows that the Asiatic foreigners who were in Egypt were only there about 210 years. The reality is we were in Egypt not 400 years, but almost exactly 210 years. The Bible describes the beginning of our captivity when Isaac is born. That's where that 400 year comes from. From the birth of Isaac, that's when the 400 year marker begins. We're not even a nation when Isaac is born, because Jacob is not even here yet, obviously. We were only in ancient Kemet for 210 years. But the Bible begins the time span of captivity with Isaac, because the Bible begins the time span of our captivity with the moment that Abraham leaves ancient Egypt, which is highly significant to note. So in further developing that point, you made another point that I wanted to talk about when it comes to recordation. I see somebody in the chat room wrote 1200 BCE as the date of the Exodus. And I just want to say that that's incorrect, but that's okay. I see the real Dr. Phil. Shout out to you. That's a dope name, the real Dr. Phil. I like that. Between 1400 and 1200 BC. And that's actually far more accurate. But I think the best answer given is William Smithers, because he said, I don't know. You know what I teach, Moreh, in all of my classes?
Mm.
The best answer one can give when our knowledge on a particular subject is limited is to say, I don't know. The worst thing we can do is guess. The worst thing we can do is guess. Most of the scholarship we have today, most of the things that are believed in our community today is based on guesswork. And that's the worst thing you could do. The best thing you can do when you don't know something is to say, I don't know. Because you set yourself up by saying, I don't know, for finding the answer. The more you come into spaces with humility, because remember, it takes humility to say, I don't know. How many Israelite teachers on their live, when they're asked questions, you can actually hear them say, I don't know. Most of them will try their best to run around the topic and not address it, rather than simply admit, I don't know. But I tell everyone in my classes, I don't know is the best answer for this one reason. The more you accustom yourself to being humble and saying, I don't know, the more you put yourself in a position where someone who actually does know says, oh, I could tell you, I got the answer, I know. But when you walk around as a person that knows everything, which remember, no one knows everything, then the people who do know a little bit more than you, because there are people that know more than us in the world, they can't get to share with you because you're walking around telling everyone that your cup is full. So because your cup is full, no one can pour into you. This is why King David prayed and said, create for me a hollow heart, because he knows God cannot pour into him if he is full of himself. He knows wisdom cannot immerse itself within him if he is full of himself. It takes humility. It takes admitting I don't have the answers for God to pour in onto us, for wisdom to reach us. So the best answer is I don't know. And I'll tell you guys, and I don't want anyone to accept my opinion. I want you to fact check it live. The date of the Exodus is 1446 BCE. 1446 BCE. That was the date of the Exodus. How do we get the date? King Solomon gives it to you right in the Bible when he tells you from the building of the Jerusalem temple until the Exodus, he gives you the time span. When you go back and you look at the years that King Solomon made the statement, to the time span he said that it is from the Exodus, that's 1446 BCE. And I adjure everyone to simply fact check me live. So why is that date important? What we know as it pertains to the 42 negative confessions in ancient Kemet, and I just want to pull that up so you guys can see, is that the oldest representation of the 42 negative confessions or the 42 laws of Ma'at is in what is known as the Paprus of Mahepri. He's a Nubian scribe, and the year is 1393 BC. The year is 1393 BC. Why is that significant? By the way, this is chapter 125 of the Runu Pert Emheru. This is chapter 125 of the 42 laws of Ma'at. This is where you go in the ancient Egyptian Bible and you find their laws. Just like you can open the Tanakh or the Hebrew Bible, go to Exodus 20, you find the 10 Commandments. In chapter 125 of the Runu Pert Emheru, misnomered as the Book of the Dead, is where you can find the 42 laws of Ma'at. The oldest representation of it is in the Paprus of Mahepri. And you, again, don't have to take my word on it, because I shared a video clip of a grandmaster teacher called Mfudishi, who's well into his 70s, who himself admits the very first time that Egypt gets the 42 laws of Ma'at is with the scribe known as Mahepri. The year is 1393 BC. Guys, the Exodus happened in 1446 BC. We received the Torah on Mount Sinai exactly 3 months after. The month is called Sivan, S-I-V-A-N. In Hebrew, it's pronounced S-I-W-A-N, Siwan. on the 6th of Siwan. On the Hebrew calendar year 2448, we received the Torah. The secular calendar year is 1446 BC. Just like right now, we are in 2021. What is the Hebrew calendar right now? What year are we, guys, on the Hebrew calendar? I was born 5740. I'm now 41, almost 42. So we are now in what? 57 what? 82. 5782. Even though the year on the Gregorian calendar is 2021. So when the Exodus occurred, the secular calendar is 1446 BCE, but the Hebrew calendar is 2448 BCE, and it's in, 2448, and it's in the 6th of Siwan, which is the 3rd month on the Hebrew calendar, 3 months after Nisan or Aviv. Why is that significant? Because that means almost a full 80 years before Egypt gets 42 laws of Ma'at, God already spoke the Torah to the children of Israel. So almost 100 years before Egypt receives her laws, God already declares to the children of Israel the Torah. This is why chronology.
Let's get a little more. Go ahead. Finish your point.
This is why, and this is the last point. This is why chronology is so important. If we don't know the date of the Exodus, then the Kemetic community can tell us anything. And yeah, we can still argue that they're wrong, but when you have dates, you can prove that they're wrong. But without dates, we're just arguing. But when you have dates, you have chronology, and you know the history, now you can prove that they're wrong.
Man. All right. So let's I want to go here real quick. Let's see here. Want to get a little more. Go ahead and get some more controversy. You just spewing it out anyway. So let's get a little more here. Let me see here. Where's my screen here? Here we go. All right. Let's talk about Deuteronomy 28 and 68. And this was
Woo!
So let's deal with Deuteronomy 28 and 68. And I know some of the other brothers that's been walking with me. I see some of the deacons in there and the elders. They've been walking with me for at least 4 or 5 years. So you guys, y'all see this, y'all are definitely understand the point and perspective. But to the new brothers and sisters that are tuning in, pay attention to this, okay? Please pay attention. And matter of fact, I think it was I saw another breakdown of this that was good. I think it was I forget his first name, but he goes by the Danite. What's his name? I forgot his name. Oh man. And I also seen Chief Uzziel didn't do one on this, did he?
No, not in Hebrew. They go into it a lot, but he didn't do one in Hebrew.
Are you familiar with I forgot his first name, but he wrote a book. And basically from New York too. He wrote a book.
Cashapp the Danite?
Yeah. That's who it was.
We're from the same congregation.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, he did an awesome breakdown on this as well. So I want everybody to check this out. Yeshiyah, aka Mr. Black Tastic, you'll appreciate this as well. Here we go. Let's break this down. Let's check this out.
Looking at biblical Hebrew, there's something called the het pa'el reflexive verb stem. There are 7 major verb stems in the Hebrew language. One of them is referred to as the het pa'el verb stem, which we say is reflexive. We say it's reflexive because it represents any action which the subject is doing to themselves. Any action which the subject is doing to themselves. For instance, with regard to Deuteronomy 28:68, it doesn't say in Hebrew, and you shall be sold to your enemies. No, the Hebrew says, wehit makartem. Wehit makartem. Makar in Hebrew means to buy or sell.
Tem in Hebrew is a plural representing a group. Wehit is the heat patel verb stem, indicative and descriptive of the subject of the sentence doing something to themselves. So the perfect rendition of Deuteronomy 28:68, that particular phrase is not, and you shall be
Let me
sold to
stop
your
right there.
enemies.
Let me stop.
God-
See, you causing problems, man. Okay. This is what you causing problems with this. Do you know how long brothers been pushing this and teaching this, that it says this? Now, simply if you go into definitely like you're doing with the Hebrew, I think you use a Safari, right? In this video.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you can simply download the app for those who, are starting Hebrew or whatnot and beginners or whatnot. You go and you pull it up. It's right there in the doggone. That's what I don't understand. Let me just play. Let me let you just play it. I don't want to go on over the rant mode. Let me play it.
God says in biblical Hebrew, and you shall sell yourselves. Why does he say that we sold ourselves? That's not how it played out in history. We were taken by Europeans from West Africa and forcefully placed on ships and forcefully placed to the Isles of the Caribbean, the Americas, North and South, UK, Canada, wherever have you. So understanding that, why does the Bible say we sold ourselves? Because in the language of the Bible, when you give up yourself to sin, when you give of yourself to sin, the Bible considers it a wage in that it says you worked for it. Throughout the Bible, in reference to many kings, it says, and he sold himself to do that which is evil in the eyes of the Lord. And he sold himself to do that which is wicked. And in the New Testament, it says, and the wages of sin are death. That's coming from the Old Testament. The Old Testament considers that when you give yourself unto sin, that's a wage. You worked for it. Hence, the New Testament comes and says, the wages of sin are death. So in Deuteronomy 28:68, defining for us how we go into captivity, God does not tell us it or describe it the way we know it to happen, which is our enemies sold us. God says you sold yourself. Because what does he want us to focus on? He doesn't want us to focus on the people he used to beat us up. He wants us to focus on the idea that we are the cause of our own destruction. And that's powerful.
Okay. Now, if you understand and know, Moreh, hold on real quick. Okay, sorry about that. If you understand the basics, just the basics of the Torah and understand the covenant, your point and perspective is on point and key to the aspect of how do you blame somebody else for something that we did? And I think that's the issue with a lot of our brothers is that we're so focused on the tool that was used. It's like, do we ever get mad at the belt, Moreh?
Never. When your mama tore your behind up and you looked at the belt and you said, as soon as she leaves, it's me and you. Never. So why does our community become so fixated on Esau? Why are we so fixated on the European kingdoms responsible for their role in the carrying of us to captivity when the Bible makes it clear we are the cause of our captivity? You know what is special about the Bible, Moreh? There's a word called accountability. Psychologically speaking, when a person shows no signs of accountability, they're actually displaying signs of still being a child. Adults show accountability because adults are supposed to own up to the things that they have done. It is only a child that says, everything in my life is wrong because of you. It is only a child that says, this happened just because of you. But at some stage in your maturity, you look in the mirror Because the answer really is, with all things in life, we have choices. Even if someone plays a role in your demise, you had a role as well because you entertained them, and that was your choice. It is an adult thing to be able to say, I hold myself accountable. What is that old school proverb, Moreh? Fool me once, shame on you. Or fool me twice, shame on me.
That's right.
So what makes the Torah so powerful? It's a book of accountability. We read about how great Moses is, but we also read, because he said to the people, shall we give you drink? As if him and God are equal, he now cannot go into the land. We read about David. As great as the Bible says he is, the Bible records that he's a murderer and adulteress. All of our great men and women in the Bible are not immune to sin or error. So the Bible is a great book in part because of its transparency, its objectivity, and the fact that it is extremely accountable. It holds all of the greatest to account for their actions. When the Bible says that we're going into captivity, the way that it's worded in Hebrew is that you sold yourself. Because in the language of the text, anytime we commit sin, the Bible says that you worked for it. We don't realize that everything we do in life, we earn a response. If you do good, the response you earn is good. If you do bad, the response you earn is good. But the point is, whatever you do, you are earning something. Now, are you earning something good or are you earning something bad? When we forsook the commandments and we began to get knee deep in sin, then the wages that we earned brought about our demise. This is why throughout the book of Kings, beginning with the king Ahab, the Bible says because Ahab didn't follow in the ways of his fathers, because he erected stone pillars, because he followed idols, because he sold himself to do that which is wicked in the eyes of the Lord. Hold on. Sold himself?
That's what it says.
Isn't that the word used in Deuteronomy 28:68? Except this time when it's used for Ahab, it's in the singular because it's talking about one man.
That's right.
So it says, Wehit mecharto. He sold himself in the singular. But when referencing the nation, it says hit makar tem, because the suffix tem in Hebrew is a plural suffix denoting a group of people. Let me tell you something, Moreh. There's a great part of confusion with regard to understanding the Bible that can simply be corrected by learning the language of the Bible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, let me ask you one more. I have two more questions, but I want to go into this one question because you wrote an awesome book about this. And there are people that are part of our assembly and congregation that are some of your students in Hebrew class and whatnot, and does have your books. So let me ask you this, Moreh. Can women teach a man?
Man. Oh, man. I know you didn't ask me that question. This is a whole setup question because y'all know I don't teach that women could teach.
Oh, man.
Not only, let me say this. You called me as a title on the flyer, Mr. Controversial. So expect controversy. I'm going to say it in a way, Moreh, that's going to be controversial. So they might not tune into your channel after this. Not only can women teach, but if you are a person that is only learning from men, you are walking around half retarded.
Hey, oh man, I told y'all, man. I told y'all, man. This is my brother here, man. He gonna keep it 100. Look, that's why when we had that conference in New York as Sister Only Loves, assembly up there, which was an awesome gathering of teachers and leaders and Christians and Israelites and things like that. You was like, nah, don't use that picture for that flyer. I'm like, why not? This is exhibits who Zion Lexx is. Mr. Controversial, different from everybody else. So
right.
go ahead, Moreh. You wrote a book on that.
Let me say this. I wrote a book in 2016. Let's just make sure your audience.
Hold on, let me blow it up real quick. Hold on. There you go.
All right, I bought a book in 2016. I wrote a book in 2016 entitled Matriarchs of the Covenant. The book speaks on all of the matriarchs of the Bible, namely the Old Testament. And I highlight all of the intellectual and spiritual achievements of the women of the Bible. Now, why do I do so? What I learned and observed in the 27 years that I've been an Israelite, I've been an Israelite 41 years, but in the 27 years of knowing myself as an Israelite, the things that I observed is that even in places that said that they have respect for women, you can truly see, Moreh, that they really don't have respect for women. Even among Israelites that feel that women could teach, Moreh, I gotta tell you, they don't really feel that way. Because the proof is not in what we say, the proof is in what we do. Talk is so cheap, people do it in their sleep.
Yeah.
And what I notice is that our women are extremely marginalized. I watched in the same communities that said, we don't teach that women can't teach. I watched in those same communities where they push women to just learn sewing. And for the brothers, they said, you gotta read every book possible. But for the sisters, there was a push to just, y'all make these garments. Now, let me say something, Moreh. Culturally speaking, does that make sense? Absolutely. Women were definitely garment makers. They weren't the only garment makers, however. Women were also teachers. Don't we have a woman called Deborah, who is a married woman? But I want to say something to you, Moreh, and I want to say something to your audience. Before the Bible tells us that Deborah is married, before it even tells us that she's married or who she's married to, the first way she is described is not being the wife of so-and-so. The first way that she is described in the Bible is not being a wife. The first description the Bible gives of a Deborah is that she is a judge and a prophetess. Why is that significant, Moreh? Because there are literally Israelites here teaching women that your greatness is in who your husband is. There are literally teachers out here telling these women, Moreh, that your greatness is in who your husband is. Need I remind you, Moreh, before the Bible tells us who her husband is, before the Bible even mentioned that she's married, it tells us she's a judge and a prophetess. Why does the Bible place emphasis on that before even describing that she's married? It's common sense, Moreh. We have to understand that our women are capable of immense contributions. And this was the design from at the beginning. We talked about something called common sense, and that's a reoccurring theme, and I'm going to continue to say this. Notice how Eve does not fall under the authority of Adam until after the sin, which obviously then means prior to the sin, it was Eve and Stephen.
That's right.
Or else how could the Bible say that she is now under her husband if this was the design from the beginning? So the design that the Creator saw from the beginning was that the two were Eve and Stephen, intellectually speaking and spiritually speaking. The two, Moreh, were truly one. You cannot truly be one if he is the only intellectual. You cannot truly be one if he is the real spiritual one. But you can truly be said to be one when you are both intellectual. You can truly be said to be one when you are both spiritual. I want us to notice something. The first woman the Bible talks about, I don't know what the people out here saying. I heard the name Eve. But I got to tell you, as a spokesman of the Bible, of which we are as Morehs, right? As teachers, we're spokesmen, right?
Mm-hmm.
This does don't say Moreh over here as a title. I'm really a Moreh in the community, as you are as well. I was given this title not by people on Facebook, but by elders with many years of practicing Torah.
That's right.
Right? So in saying that, Moreh, we got to teach this book. Because the Bible says the first woman is called Hawa. Not Eve, Hawa. And this is why Hebrew is so important. Because if we saying Eve, all we thinking about is apple juice. You know, one of the most famous brands of apple juice is Eve, associated with the store garden. What we talk about here? The Bible says her name is Hawa. In the Bible, it says she is the mother of all living. So when you ask Moreh, the average Hebrew, what is the meaning of Eve's name, Moreh? You know what they will say to you, Moreh? They'll say Eve means the mother of all living. And I want to tell you this, Moreh, that is only partially true. I'll tell you why. The word for life in Hebrew is chaya. Chaya. That's how you say life. Or you can say chai, which is spelled in Hebrew chet and yod. Chai. If you want to say living in Hebrew, it's chaya, and that's spelled chet yod hey. I want you to notice something, Moreh. When you open the text, Eve's name is not spelled chet yod hey. Eve's name is spelled chet wav hey. The Bible doesn't call Eve chaya, which is living. The Bible calls her Hawa with a W, which means to speak life. Open up Psalms chapter 19. Look at verses 2 through 3. Day unto day speaks. Matter of fact, let me read it. Because one thing I'm big on is not butchering the text by missing a single word. I want this to be perfect. Psalms 19, verse 2 says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament tells of his handiwork. Day after day utters speech, and night after night declares knowledge. Well, Moreh, the word for declares, as in declares knowledge, in Psalms 19 and 3, that's the word Yahweh. Yahweh, spelled in Hebrew, Yod, Chet, Wav, He. The root, however, is Hawa, Eve's name. The word used in Psalms 19:3 for declares knowledge is Hawa. That's Eve's name. How could we even imagine that women can't teach when the name that God gives the first woman is to declare knowledge? Hello!
Hey, listen, boy. I'm sitting there trying to stop from laughing. They are in the chat clowning about you ain't getting no more cookout invitations. Somebody said Zion just lost half of his cookout invitations too, and may not get any potato salad at some for speaking truth. Then somebody said you might get the raisin potato salad.
and you know what, Moreh? You see, in our, I don't want to say profession, as I really want to say calling, we have to be prepared. If we are truly speaking the word of God, Moreh, you know who is, this is not written in the Torah, so I don't want anybody to think I'm adding to the Bible. So that's why I'm going to say, what I'm about to say is not written in the Bible, but it can be inferred.
Okay.
You know who is truly called by God? Those people who, when the moment we hear what they have to say, we reject it. You know why, Moreh? Go back and look in the Bible. Did the children of Israel ever like or even entertain the men and women of God? Were they not all hated?
Wow.
You
Say
know
it
why,
all
Mo?
the time. Say it all the time.
It boils down to something that all of us know, especially in the Black community. We say this so often. Nobody likes the truth, Moreh. Nobody likes the truth. The best among us, the truly best, are simultaneously, Moreh, the most hated among us. But you know why, Moreh? Nobody likes the truth. You know, that person that always has to come and say something different than what we all accept. Who do you think you are, Jeremiah? We don't want to hear the words of Jeremiah. But Jeremiah speaking the word of God. We don't want to hear the voice of Ezekiel, but Ezekiel speaking the word of God. Nobody wants to hear the truth because we are living in falsehood and futility. And the truth is a direct contradiction of that lifestyle. The true mark of someone called by God is that they are simultaneously hated by the people. Go check the record. The people saw Moses climb on Mount Sinai, heard God speak directly to him, and still challenged him.
Still challenging. Yep.
Nobody likes the truth. Nobody likes the man or woman that comes to contradict everything we're so comfortable hearing. And one thing about the truth, Moreh, it will contradict what people believe is true.
Man, look, they been stopped inviting me to the cookout. We got too many more Raws in our congregation, so they been stopped invite me. So, but let's get into this more. I want to ask you one last question, and we're gonna get out of here. So, man, now this was controversial. I kind of saw this because I've been following you for a while, and I kind of saw this coming. And I thank the Most High to be able to have a conversation with a brother. I wish he was on here now watching, but I'll send him the video. Both of us was actually following you for a while, and I told him, I said, man, just the way you approach things, just seeking the truth, I really believe that the Most High would guide in that area of things. And I just told him, I said, man, just watch the brother. I'm telling you, he's not closed-minded. And I think his pursuit will eventually lead him to a place. Whatever that is, I don't know, but I don't think it will be totally where he is right now in the way many people have come at him. At one point in time, you had a belief that Yeshua never existed. Am I correct?
That is absolutely correct. The temple that I came from actually taught that the entire New Testament was as fake as Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. To quote the head of the place, to quote Nasi Yashuvel's father, Prince Sapor, who I respect dearly, they taught, and still teach that the New Testament and its narrative is as fake as Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And remember, when I came into that school, I'm 14 years old, and these are the people who are introducing me to all of the culture of Israel, all of the culture of the Bible. So with all of the powerful things that they were telling me, I assumed that this was right too. But I read somewhere in the New Testament that when I am a child, I do as a child. But when I am an adult, I do as an adult. Now, I know I'm butchering it, but you know what New Testament scripture I'm referencing.
You good.
Right? So
you're dealing with, Paul.
When I got older, I started to research on my own, and I discovered, as much as I love my elders, no one knows everything.
Yeah.
And they were wrong.
Let me ask you this, because when I initially it was the I think it was like thumbnail, and I'm glad you kind of did that with Chief Uzziel, because just looking at the way you guys function with one another on screen and things like that, I could tell that there's such a mutual respect. Not only that, but I think I really believe there's a sincere brotherhood. You can see the spirit there. And for him to interview you, because I watched the different parts of the interview, what was that like, coming to the place that, and I know we all still have growth and it's still a process, but what was it like going from, wait a minute, let me start over. It was in that there was one of the, I think was it one of the brothers that you grew up with who introduced you to the community?
Mm-hmm.
Was it him who you didn't know that he was even looking into the New Testament and aspects? You want to share that? Go ahead, because I don't want to butcher it up, but I think that I'm on the right track with that. And it was a statement that he said that actually stuck with you about when we see, it was a statement that Yeshua said that could be viewed in the non-Messianic community as idol worship or becoming an idol or something like that. Yeah, that was a powerful part in the video.
Yes, I remember. I'll tell you. So let me just give you I'm gonna make this as fast as possible.
Okay.
Most people know Nasi Yashuvel because of the thing with SETI, the debate. Yeah. And of course, Kevin on trial. Mm-hmm. It's his father's congregation that I really became I want to say a beast in terms of my ability to defend this book. Mm-hmm. You know, his father's congregation got a hell of a debaters come out of this congregation, brother. Cashapp the Danite?
Yeah.
He is an amazing Hebrew teacher. We learned Hebrew from some of the same teachers. He actually has more Hebrew teachers that he learned and studied with than even me. Mm-hmm. And that's because he came into this way of life not by himself, but with his mother, but I came alone. So he had a little bit more exposure, but he comes from that school too, Shema Israel. And I want to tell you that one thing we do in there is debate. And Nasi Yashuvel, being my age, we're both born in 1979. I'm born November 7th. Damn, Moreh, you feel comfortable giving us your whole age? Yeah, I'm one of them black men that don't got a bad record. You can look me up. You can look me up. I'm not working for the feds.
Right.
So I'm born in 1979, November 7th. Nasi Yashuvel is born in July of 1979. So he's about, 4 months older than me, let's say. So we were very close coming up. And his older brother, Prince Nathaniel, that's my man. That's my man. Like, I love Prince Nat. And that's the person that we're talking about now. He's the person that made the statement that we're going to entertain. And I want to say this with all humility and respect. What most people know about Nasi Yashuvel, they know him to be very humble, they say. They know him to be very intelligent. But I want to tell you guys something, and this is not me being arrogant. If we're going to put it on the record, we're going to keep it real. In the 90s, when I was in his father's temple, he was not really there because there was a time that he left and went to Georgia. Mm-hmm. That's why most people know him as coming from Georgia.
Yeah.
But he's originally from New York. Mm-hmm. But in the 90s, when we created something called the SOG, the Sons of God, where every first Sabbath of the month we would come up and teach, Nasi Yashuvel was nowhere to be found. Mm. And myself and several other young men, we were the proteges of his father. Long before, and I'm keeping it all the way real. This is, some people might think, oh, damn, why he doing that to Nasi? I'm just, if we're going to tell the history, it's important that we recount it accurately. Going back to the age of 15 and 16 and 17, when I was teaching at his father's temple, and that's how early I was teaching, by the way. I'm talking about to grown men and grown women.
Right.
I'm talking about 200 and something people in the congregation, a big crowd.
Wow.
Nasi Yashuvel was in Georgia and was not known as a teacher. So when people know some of my history, they say, oh, that's the guy that Nasi brought, not realizing that in his father's temple, I'm the protege of the young men our age. And that's all facts. Anybody that was in that moment, such as Cashapp the Danite, could tell you. Chief Uziel will tell you. I was the protege among those young men. I was the guy that they was like, damn, we want to hear from Avdiel. You know what I'm saying? So many years later, when I heard about Yashuvel battling Seti, I went to the debate, even though I hadn't seen him for maybe over 10 years. But I went to the debate to support my brother first because I never knew him to be a teacher. We taught in the temple and his brothers, but he never taught. He was more hood. Y'all don't know the fighter side of Nasi. Nasi was getting into trouble. He was, in fact, that's why he went to Georgia, because he got in trouble.
Right.
He was cutting up in school like many of us did, and he was a fighter. So his father sent him to Georgia. And when he became an adult, a real grown man, that's when he started getting into the books. So in talking this history, I just got to keep it real and set the record straight. So one day his brother, about 5 years ago, when I was in Shamar, his brother said something that I'll never forget. In Shamar, we used to always teach, because even I taught it, that when Yeshua said, I and the Father are one, we would be like, oh, hell no. What did we just read? Hold on. Because I even got the New Testament in Hebrew, in the interlinear. So I'm like, wait, I and the Father are one. I could read that in Hebrew, in the New Testament, and in English. You know, like I said, I pride myself on studying things in their original language. So even when I read the New Testament, I read it in Aramaic and Hebrew. So when we encountered the verse, I and the Father are one, we felt like, all right, now our hands are tied behind our back. Because if we want to give you credit, after you said that, how can we stand by you? Because ain't no man one with God. But Prince Nathaniel made a statement that I don't even think he realized the implications of. Because even though he still believes that the statement that Yeshua made is crazy, Prince Nathaniel, my brother, I love him dearly, he said, you know what's righteousness? When people meet you as an Israelite, you know what your righteousness is? When somebody meets a righteous Israelite, they should feel like they had an encounter with God.
Wow. That statement still hits me. I'm like, wow.
See the meme? You ever see the meme or the emoji with the head exploding?
Yeah.
Woo! He said, any righteous Israelite, if you're truly righteous, when somebody meets you, they should feel like they had an encounter with God.
Wow.
And a light bulb came in my head at the same moment. And as he's saying that, I heard in my head, I and the Father are one.
Wow. 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 So do you think that the confusion behind the things that he said, they really didn't understand the implications behind it? Maybe it was because of the fact that they were what's the word I want to use? They were so I guess connected to the letter of Torah that a statement can be said and can be taken out of context, because he's basically trying to say that you should be an example, and that when someone does encounter you, that they are meeting the one that you serve or the one that you follow. I mean, what do you think? Why do you think that they kind of misunderstood a lot of his statement? Even to this day, there's still a lot of people that still, even when I had Nassim on we were kind of even talking about that. It's the statements that he made that cause more trouble than actually looking into exactly what is he trying to say.
Let me say this to you. I am far from Yeshua.
Right.
I
Right.
truly believe, Moreh, I truly believe that he was a master teacher of Torah. With
Right.
that being said, I can't tie his shoes.
Yeah.
But I want to say something to you. You called me Mr. Controversial. Don't you know that that's what he would have been in his era?
Yep. That's true.
Exactly
That's
what
true.
he was. He was
Yep.
somebody that would say things that people never heard before,
Yeah.
but we all knew because nobody's stupid.
Yeah.
We all knew that, damn, it sounds deep,
Yeah.
but we don't all the way want to trust it because
Yeah.
first, you see, Moreh, when you are not living Torah, how can you truly open your ears to Torah?
Wow. Wow.
You have to live Torah. There are Israelites that really think the wisdom of the Torah will be revealed to them if they stack their library this high.
Mm-hmm.
The wisdom of the Torah is revealed when you become a living embodiment of Torah. And that's what Yeshua means when he says that it was made for man and not man for it. That is the deeper context of understanding the law, understanding the concept that he is an embodiment of Torah. You cannot truly attain to wisdom unless you begin to embody Torah. How do you do that? You got to live within it. In living within the confines of Torah, you'd be so surprised at how exalted your mind becomes, how open your spirit becomes. And then that's when wisdom feels comfortable in now resting and residing within you. Because it says, I, wisdom, only dwell with a humble and contrite spirit or heart. So the Torah teaches us humility. The Torah says, if the ox of your neighbor crouches under its burden, you shall repeatedly help him. Excuse me, if the ox of your enemy crouches under its burden, if it falls, you shall repeatedly help him. Now, they spoke of ox because that was the vehicle of their day.
Right.
But let's bring it back to 2021. If every day you pass by Martin Luther King Boulevard, every black city got a Martin Luther King Drive, road, avenue, or boulevard, right? And you continually see your brother, who you think is your enemy. I say think because the moment you call your brother your enemy, you ain't speaking Torah. So the moment you see your enemy, who's really your brother, you're going to act like you don't see him. That's not Torah. Torah says, if the ox of your enemy crouches under its burden, you shall repeatedly help him. You don't get to say, he my enemy, and I helped him on Monday. I ain't helping him on Wednesday. I helped him enough. I'm keep going. If you the one that keep running into him while he's down and out, the Torah says you shall be the one to help him repeatedly. Moreh, what do you think the Torah is teaching us? You see, Moreh, the Torah is transformational. It transforms the spirit. When we practice and live Torah, we can no longer be who we were. When we practice and live Torah, we are not even physical in that moment. We are truly spiritual. It is the practice and becoming a living embodiment of Torah that transfigurates us in spirit or transforms us in spirit. And that's the idea of Torah, because the Torah is love. Oh man, what? Zion is also Christian? The Torah is love? The Torah is love. Moreh, if I ask right now, what's the definition of love? You know what people are going to tell me, Moreh? And watch the chat room. And this is no disrespect, but just listen. People are going to say, love, emotions. They're going to say, having a good heart or being kind. This is the importance of learning Hebrew, Moreh. The word for love in biblical Hebrew is ahav. Ahav. The first part is the letter Aleph. As a prefix, the letter Aleph, when it's the first letter in any Hebrew word, it's the first person future. It means I will. The second part is Hav, which means to give. So the word love in Hebrew is Ahav. I will always give. Or, Moreh, if you say I will always give, what are you saying? Unconditional giving.
Wow.
Giving without conditions. This is why I say to people, when they speak of love and they say I have unconditional love, I say there's no need to say unconditional love. They say why? I said because in the first language, Hebrew, the word for love means unconditional giving. Unconditional is part of the definition of love, so you never have to speak of love as unconditional love. The word love itself already entails giving without restraint, giving without condition. But hold on, Moreh, because let's be real, Moreh. How can I be unconditional in my giving with someone that wrongs me? How can I be unconditional in my giving with someone who fails me? How can I be unconditional in my giving with someone who purposely tries to harm me? You become unconditional in giving only when you are following what God says. And then watch this, Moreh. If you behave unconditionally with your giving, do you know what that does? It transforms you in spirit because it is against everything you believe. You believe if you do wrong to me, I'm going to do wrong to you. We believe if you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you. But the Torah says, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. That is unconditional giving, Moreh. That is love. Love is transformative. It takes you out of the physical and into the spiritual. When you practice Torah, you become a transformed spirit that the Creator can now use. You now can be used as a holy vessel. You can empower the people. You can empower peoples and nations. You can be the spark that unites the world.
That's right. Man, that's powerful, bro. Oh, man. Look, so here's what I want to do. I want to transition out. Man, powerful. We're going to definitely have to have Moreh back. Shout out to, I just seen in the chat, Moreh, Pastor Kelly Richardson, We Woke Now. Shout out to Moreh, David Glynn or David Royal. Shout out to him as well. He's also a teacher, fluent teacher and speaker of Hebrew. And so definitely got some of the Morehs in here. Shout out to the elders and the deacons, everybody. And shout out to the sisters, man, that's in the chat as well, the Morahs and everybody, man. This has definitely been awesome, man. Everybody's truly loved it. So we're going to have our brother back. But go ahead and give out information. I know you gave out some of the things about the class, give out the Amazon information and different things like that before we get out of here.
All right, thank you very much, Moreh. First thing I want to say is thank you for the opportunity to have me on your show. You know, every opportunity that we have to speak this truth that we're blessed to be able to be spokesmen and spokeswomen to be able to speak, that's a real blessing. When we all look back at our life, for some people, the highlight is high school and all the girls I done took down. And Moreh, for some people, that's the reality. That's their reality. For some people, when they look back, the greatest highlight in their life is my years of playing college basketball or pro basketball. You know what's the greatest highlight for spiritual people, Moreh? Every opportunity God gave me to act on the wisdom he gave me and touch and inspire people. Those are the moments that spiritual people are going to look back on and feel a great sense of accomplishment. So I first thank you, Moreh, for the platform and allowing me that opportunity. And secondly, I want to thank your listening audience for the opportunity. And lastly, I want to say, if anyone is interested in my classes, you can email me at zionlex@gmail.com. You can email me at zionlex@gmail.com. When you email me, I will share with you how you can enter my classes. All of my books, as you guys can see to the back of me, is available on Amazon, as well as Barnes & Nobles. That's Amazon, as well as Barnes & Nobles. I'm a 5 times published author. I wrote books on the language, the culture, the history. I wrote a book in defense of the Torah, which is called Ancient Kemet on Trial, where I proved that we did not plagiarize anything from Egypt. Shout out to Brother Garfield, who made that book my most famous book online. That book continues to be one of my bestsellers. People don't realize that the more you hate, the more you actually give someone an audience. Don't you realize, Moreh, the more you talk about somebody, the greater of an audience you're simultaneously creating for them? With every person that you go send to go watch Zion Lexx wrong videos, you just created a new fan. Because when they go there to see what you said I was teaching wrong, they figure out, Garfield, that I know a hell of a lot more than you. And that's why many of them are in my classes. That's why it's said in the world of celebrity lifestyles, there's no such thing as bad press. That's why celebrities, we don't even realize, they leak their own issues. We be thinking when something go viral and wrong with a celebrity about their life that it's always somebody else. Sometimes the celebrity does it themselves because there's no such thing as bad press. All press gives you viewership. So to the haters, I want to address you. Continue doing the job that you do. Please, haters, do not stop your job. Do not lose a second, a minute, nor an hour coming for me. Please, because you have helped the success of what I do. To those who support me in spirit genuinely, I genuinely thank you. And to anyone who's interested in just seeing what I do, you can go online at Zion Lexx TV.
Well, Moreh, thank you, man. I know it was a awesome weekend. We didn't get a chance to even get into the weekend. Time is just rolling and whatnot. And so I value your time and I appreciate everything that you do, man. I appreciate you being humble, just being the brother that you are, man. Always open, talk to the people, answer questions, things like that. And you don't mind, coming out of your shell when need be. But thanks a lot, man. Once again, I'm definitely going to have you back on. I definitely got to have some more brothers on as well. Moreh Kelly and David Royal, and things like that. Get everybody together. We could just have a big conversation, a big cookout. But definitely thank you, man, once again, man. And I'll definitely holler at you later, man. Shalom. And man, I see your son. I see you out there. You treated him good out there, man. I see he was out there chilling.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And he's all of 12 years old. And we walking through a mall in Vegas on the Vegas Strip called the Fashion Show. That's one of the biggest and high-end malls in Vegas. My son is going to be 12 next month, so he 11 and a half. Bro, you got 16-year-old girls catcalling my son. I said, oh, man. One of his twin sisters, he has twins. I have 16-year-old daughters that are twins. And she just heard me say that. And she just looked at me like, yeah, man. So, I'm thankful of all the experiences that I have in life, Moreh. I truly am, because it's our experience that molds us for who we are to become in life. I even thank the Creator for those moments where my immaturity found my maturity. I thank the Creator for those moments where my shortcomings allowed for me to become stronger. None of us are perfect. All of us are a work in progress. We can become perfect if we follow this law. That's why Abraham was told, walk with me and be thou tamim. Perfect. With that being said, Moreh, thank you so very much.
All right. Shalom, everybody, man.